5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm Dickie Joe in Orlando, Florida, with a look at the astrology of 2024 and into early 2025 in terms of eclipses and retrogrades. Do you know, except for the full moon, more people know about retrograde Mercury than any other astrological point? I've even heard it on major news channels. Someone will say it might be the fault of retrograde Mercury when something goes haywire. And retrograde motion, of course, is an illusion. The planets don't really put the brakes on and go back and forth. It feels like they do, though. It has to do with differences in the rates of acceleration between the different planets. And of course, the sun and moon can't go retrograde, but every planet from Mercury out through Pluto can. And eclipses are like exclamation points. Going way back in history, if you look at major turning points going on, the month of October 2023 had 2 major eclipses, and that marked real turning points in the world situation. So we want to look ahead as we approach the new year and see what is happening in terms of retrogrades and eclipses. Eclipses are alignments of the sun, moon, and earth. They generate an intense energy focus. Think of how the moon affects the tides magnetically, and you can get an idea of how this happens. Elements of surprise, odd weather patterns, overall changes, growth, and new perspectives are related to eclipses. Those who have a birthday within 3 days of an eclipse, listen to see if you'll be having a hot birthday coming up, can expect to have a year of real shifts. If you're not planning to move, not planning to change your job, you might anyway if your birthday is within 3 days of an eclipse. And this doesn't have to be bad, but it can mean a change for the better and growth. To grow is to change often is to grow much. That's a very good analogy when thinking of how to use eclipses. If you know a little bit more about your birth chart, you can look at where the eclipses are falling. If they're affecting a planet, it'll be kind of like it's lighting a firecracker under that planet. We have an eclipse on March 25th of 2024, which is a lunar eclipse in the sign of Libra. This is near the south moon node. The south node eclipses are thought not to be as positive and helpful as the north node eclipses. And this will be the first of the 5 eclipses coming up. 2 are total and 3 will be partial. So this March 25th, 2024 eclipse is going to be a partial lunar eclipse in the sign of Libra. It'll emphasize things to do with justice and also to do with partnerships and the rule of law. Then there's an eclipse season. Eclipses almost always occur in groups of 2. And they'll be at a new moon or a full moon always. And the 2-week period from a new moon to a full moon when there are 2 eclipses on either side is a crazy wild time. It's called an eclipse season. We have April 8th of 2024, a total solar eclipse in Aries. This is a north node. Aries is about new beginnings, the pioneer. It can be a rather aggressive sign ruled by Mars. Changes in leadership. So that time period, March 25th to April 8th of 2024, is a good time to mark and to be aware of. And then on September 17th of 2024, there will be another eclipse season starting, which goes until October 2nd, 2024. September 17th, we have a partial lunar eclipse in Pisces. The lunar eclipses are the one at the full moon. With Pisces, it could represent substance abuse, the water, and anything to do with illusions, not truths. I relate artificial intelligence very strongly to the sign of Pisces, and of course there are a lot of concerns about whether that is a blessing or not. So that time period of around September 17th could be very revealing. Then there's an eclipse season that lasts until October 2nd, when there is a partial solar eclipse at the new moon in Libra, and it's near the south node, which tends to be not as positive. And again, the Libra eclipse can show new things in art, also a focus on justice, and anything to do with commitments or partnerships. Now this can affect the world stage, but also filters down into our own individual lives. March 14th of 2025 is a total lunar eclipse in Virgo. And this eclipse pattern is going to be affecting health. And it also will be affecting the truth in data reporting and truth in journalism, which is a very fussy topic, and the overall well-being of animals, animal care, animal welfare, animal rights will be emphasized near the time of the March 14th eclipse. That's not until 2025. So a total eclipse is more influential than a partial, and if there's an eclipse near the moon's north node, that tends to be more positive than one near the south node. Let's talk a bit about retrograde motion in the year coming up. When I go to speak about astrology, almost everybody wants to know when the next retrograde Mercury is coming. So I'll give you a heads up about that, because we can really feel retrograde Mercury. Retrograde Mercury motion, again, is the illusion or apparent backward motion of a planetary orbit. It's created by the moon's orbit, the Earth's orbital speed relative to that of other planets. And astrologically, retrogrades are very significant. They herald a promising change of pace and a real difference in paths and perspectives. Mercury retrograde occurs 3 or 4 times a year, and it impacts technology, travel, and communication. Those who have been out of touch can return to your life. You can complete an old project you've abandoned before. Think of the prefix RE: review, remember, return, reconnect. Gemini and Virgo people are especially influenced by Mercury retrograde. We have a Mercury retrograde in Aries from April 1st to April 25th of 2024. We have a Mercury retrograde in August from August 6th to the 28th of 2024 in both Virgo and Leo. From September 25th, from November 25th of 2024 to December 15th of 2024, Mercury will be retrograde in Sagittarius. March 15th of 2025 through April 7th of 2025, next year, Mercury will be retrograde in Pisces and Aries. You can see that the retrograde Mercury lasts just about 3 weeks. Have you ever heard much about Venus retrograde? Probably not, because it's the rarest of the retrogrades. When Venus is retrograde, it's not a good time to change your relationship status. It's also a time to be careful of money and social situations. If someone ends up wearing bowling shoes to a formal dance or dinner, Venus is probably retrograde, because inappropriate clothing, inappropriate behaviors tend to really appear when Venus is retrograde. We have one coming up from March 1st of 2025 through April 12th of 2025. And it will be in Pisces and Aries, but there isn't one until that. Mars retrograde affects the military, and whenever there's a war that takes place under a retrograde Mars, the aggressor always loses. And it's interesting that the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, started by Russia, started under a Mars retrograde, because it indicates that against all odds, Ukraine probably will win, if anyone's going to win in that conflict in the long run. This also boils down to small conflicts in the neighborhood or within the family. If someone is acting up and pushing your buttons and Mars is retrograde, just step back, leave them alone, and they will definitely be sorry that they started the conflict. Good thing to know, a little bit of the magic and astrology. The military, heavy industry are impacted by the Mars retrograde. Aries and Scorpio people will be affected. December 6th of 2024 through February the 23rd of 2025, we do have a Mars retrograde coming up in Cancer and Leo. Jupiter retrograde affects large animals and wildlife preservation, speculation, gambles, and the world of education and religion. The largest planet in the zodiac has quite a broad spectrum of things that it will affect. Sagittarius and Pisces people are especially affected by Jupiter retrograde. Jupiter will be retrograde from October 9th, 2024 until February the 4th of 2025 in Gemini. Saturn retrograde. Saturn, the ringed planet, the celestial heavy, impacts elderly people, the disadvantaged, employment, natural resources, the land, fruits of the land, fossil fuels. Capricorn and Aquarius are especially affected. Saturn will be retrograde from June 29th to 2024 and from November 15th to 2024. Kind of a long retrograde in the sign of Pisces. Saturn retrograde again can affect elder care and the well-being of the elderly and the disadvantaged. Uranus retrograde will especially affect Aquarians. It relates to computer technology, revolutions, really extreme weather, and inventions and science. We have a Uranus retrograde coming up September 1st through the 24th of 2020, September 1st of 2024 through January 30th of 2025. This will be in Taurus. Neptune retrograde impacts the water supply and aquatic creatures, chemicals, spiritual forces, and psychic phenomena. Pisces people will be especially impacted by Neptune retrograde. We have a Neptune retrograde in Pisces from July 2nd of 2024 all the way until December 7th of 2024. You'll notice as we're getting further and further away from the sun, the retrograde time periods are longer, and because there's a wider circuit around the zodiac from that planet's year around the sun. And that's why Mercury, as the closest planet to the sun, has so many retrogrades. And finally, we're here at Pluto, on the fringes of the zodiac. Pluto retrograde affects the masses, overpopulation, ecology, espionage. The birth rates and the death rates are affected by Pluto. Nuclear power and all the mysteries of birth, death, and rebirth relate to Pluto. Pluto retrograde will affect Scorpio and Aries particularly. And we have a Pluto retrograde from May 2nd of 2024 until October 11th of 2024 in the signs of Aquarius and Capricorn. I'm Dickie Joe in Central Florida with information about the phenomena of the new year ahead. Pluto will be changing signs, by the way, as a sideline. Pluto only changes signs every 20 years, and it's been on the cusp recently of Capricorn and Aquarius, 2024 to 2025. It'll be going over the cusp. And everybody is asking me, what's going on in the world? Why are things the way they are? We're starting a whole new era. Some people think it's the legendary age of Aquarius. It might well be. So wishing you a bright and positive time ahead and an interesting time in the years 2024, 2025, and beyond.